So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make a new composition at whatever resolution and frame rate you need. I'm 1080 by 1920 obviously. You're going to want to put your text in. You want to make it a decent size as well, and you're just going to want to put it somewhere in the middle. Choose a font which you think suits your film. As this is a horror film, I wanted a sort of strong looking font. Unfortunately, there wasn't one in After Effects library, so I had to go to dafont.com where you can find hundreds of free fonts. Just make sure that if you're using this in a film, you're using one that is 100% free, not just for personal use. So as you can see, they've got hundreds of fonts, dozens of categories, so you should be able to find something for your needs here. Again, just make sure that the font you choose is 100% free. It should say just above the download button. In the end, I settled on this font as I felt it really captured the sort of feeling of the film. Alright, so now that that font is installed, I headed back into After Effects and I obviously chose that font. I made the text a little bigger as this is a title screen. You want it to take up you want it to be central. You want people to see it immediately. I also then proceeded to change the color of the text to red just using the type tool. I felt that red has a stronger association with the horror genre, being the color of blood and everything. It also can induce feelings of anxiety, which is something we tried to go for in this film. In order to align things more accurately in After Effects, or any Adobe program for that matter, you can press Ctrl-, which will bring up a grid, and this grid will allow you to see where things are. You can center them, you can offset them evenly. It's very helpful. Alright, so then I applied my first effect to the text layer. This is the Liquify effect. Using the forward warp tool, which is the first tool you can select on the Liquify effect, I made these tentacles which came off from the text. The two things you can change that matter the most with the Liquify tool is the brush size, which changes the size of the brush, and the brush pressure, which changes how quickly you warp the text. I set the brush pressure to 100 to create these big tentacles. I made sure to put the tentacles on every corner of the text as I felt that looked best. Always remember to save. You don't want to lose your work. It's a crucial part of editing, After Effects, Premiere, whatever, just always save. I then reduced my brush size in order to create these smaller tentacles, which I offset from the larger ones and the letters themselves. To make it all move, go to the Liquify effect and go to the Distortion Percentage tab. Go to the start of your sequence and set a keyframe, and set the distortion percentage to 0. Now scrub forward a couple of seconds and set it to 100%. Now it's time to do the most exciting part, adjusting your keyframes so that the motion is smooth. Shift click on both your keyframes and open up Keyframe Assistant, then set both to Easy Ease In. This makes the motion off the distortion much smoother. If you want, you can go ahead and open it in the Motion Graph Editor, which allows you to customize the motion even further. Now it's time to make your title move slightly forward. This is good as it gives the intro to the film a sense of motion. Right-click on your text layer and select Pre-Composed, then click OK. It is important to pre-compose this text layer before you make it move forward, as if you try to move forward just the text layer, you will change the distortion map. Once it is pre-composed, go to your motion keyframes and do whatever you want with it. I made mine move ever so gently forward, just to give it that sense of movement. Now to make the twitchy, blurry effect. Firstly, you're going to want to create an adjustment layer. This isn't necessary and you can apply the blur to the pre-composition, but it just helps to keep things neat. I experimented with some directional blurs at first, which led to a much more subtle effect. However, this wasn't what I was looking for in this title sequence, but it may be what you want. For a stronger effect, select the radial blur and apply this to the adjustment layer. This is a much stronger blur than the directional blur and will create a much more intense effect. To make the effect look as though it's twitching rapidly, create 3 keyframes next to each other. Set the first and last keyframes to 0 as to keep your text normal, then set the middle one to the amount of blur you wish to apply. This makes the text appear as though it is rapidly twitching. You can then copy and paste these keyframes. This allows you to recreate the effect multiple times. To add another certain pizzazz to this effect, move around the origin of the radial blur. This will make the text twitch in different directions. Bam! And there you have it, a really cool and rad title sequence. Perfect for your next horror film. But wait, you may be asking yourself, why do I even need to put this much effort into a title sequence? Well, I'm glad you asked. You see, title sequences immediately establish the mood and tone of a film. Without them, the audience has no expectation of what to expect. Creating an audience reaction is the ultimate goal of all film, so having a title sequence that immediately hits them with that is incredibly important. While making a good title may seem like a lot of effort for what ultimately becomes 5 seconds in your film, establishing an immediate audience reaction is well worth it. It is also important to remember that a good title alone won't establish a tone. Effective use of music alongside it and other visual elements will greatly improve your film.